call to order the regular formal meeting of the Iowa City City Council for September the 3rd, 2019. Roll call, please.
Cole. Mims.
Here.
Salee.
Yes.
Taylor.
Here.
Teague.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Throgmorton.
Here. So for the benefit of people in the audience, Bruce Teague is away, but he's communicating with us by phone. And Rockne Cole is also away, but it's our understanding he will be present for at least a portion of the formal meeting. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to take the liberty of doing something unfamiliar, which will take about, at the most, 2 minutes. Beginning in 2002, Iowa City's public art program has been sponsoring Poetry in the Public. This activity celebrates Iowa City's rich literary tradition and local writing talent by displaying poems by writers of all ages. This year's poems have been available for viewing in various locations, including inside city buses, at the Iowa City Public Library, and at Iowa City recreation centers, as well as other public facilities. Students and adults were invited to submit short poems. 20 students and 24 adults responded. So I'd like to thank everyone who participated and also take this opportunity to read a couple of the poems that were submitted. I've drawn 2 poems at random, and I'll read them. The first one's represents the student group, and the second represents the adult group. So the first poem comes from Sam Piper, age 7, Regina Elementary, 1st grade. The title of his poem is Snowy Day. The snow is so soft, it shines like the moon. When the snow falls, it glitters down like sand falling from the clouds. The second comes from an adult. It comes from Carol Tix. The title of her poem is What We All Want. When it was uncertain, when the suspense stretched beyond her 6-year-old limits, when the characters she had come to count as friends might be caught, she told her mother to read ahead and find out what happened so she could prepare herself for what was to come. So I want to congratulate all those who submitted poems to Poetry in Public, and especially Carol Tix and Sam Piper for their particular poems. Okay, so that was fun.
Yep.
So we can move ahead to our consent calendar. These are items 2 through 6. We need a motion to consider adoption of the consent calendar as presented or amended.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Sway, seconded by Mims. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please. Let's see. We can just go ahead and vote, right? Roll call, please.
Mims? Yes. Salee?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Motion carries 6-0. Item 7, community comment. This is for items not on the formal meeting agenda. So if you have something you want to bring to our attention, please feel free to come up and comment and take preferably about 3 minutes and absolutely not more than 5 minutes to say what's on your mind. Hi, come on up. State your name, though, when you come up, please, and write it down, too, as well.
My name is Sheila Zeithamel.
Thank you, Sheila.
So I wanted to thank you for your work for the resolution declaring a climate crisis. Thank you for that. And number 2, I wanted to say thank you for the effort and the work that's going into this 100-day report, because I think that's going to be a lot of work on many individuals' part. And the last thing I just want to call out is I think we noted when we declared this emergency that 57% of the emissions for the city is brought about by Mid-America and the University of Iowa. And while I think, Jim, you had mentioned that we don't have direct control of that, I think we don't want to underestimate the influence that we can have as a team, that we can influence others, that they just don't have the right to continue to do what they're doing. Coal is not a part of mainstream energy sources any longer. It shouldn't be for the damage it does. We also talk about natural gas. Natural gas, we know when you obtain natural gas that there's some methane emissions that go along with it. And we know that methane is 21% more climate warming than carbon. So I just want to make that note, and that we can work as a team to kind of make and influence those two groups, that they need to get in line, because to sustain ourselves and to survive on this planet, it's going to require that. So just thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. Good evening.
My name is Lorraine Dorfman, and I'm here to represent the Senior Center. I'm one of the 7, as some of you know, I'm one of the 7 Senior Center commissioners, and I really came to sort of give an update for what's been happening recently. And I first of all want to thank the council for its great support of the center. A couple things I think are important to know. There's really been some movement in a couple of directions in the last year or so, but most notably in the last month or two. And that is, one of them is the intergenerational emphasis. So even though we serve older people, there's an attempt to include other generations. Let me give you an example. The children were encouraged to come free for lunch all summer, and a number of them did, and that was a real innovation. The center sponsored an event at the film scene, a film called The Farewell, that really dealt with intergenerational relations in China, and families were encouraged to come, and free popcorn was provided. So those are just, all that stuff adds up. Another important direction is outreach. We're now giving courses out of the building. For instance, in North Liberty, there are a gamut of courses that are offered and opportunities there. Part of this was precipitated by not only interest, but the pretty severe parking problem adjacent to the center. So we're doing that. The other thing that I think is, one other thing I think is really important is the food pantry. That has been up and running for the last year, and in that anyone can come in and use it. There are non-perishable food items. Obviously, we can't have perishable stuff, so people can donate and people can take. So those are some directions. Also, we're very concerned about the facilities in general, but particularly the kitchen. And you got a proposal recently from Latasha Deloche, who is our coordinator, about possibilities for that. And we really need, with your approval, some kind of an assessment of the facility, the building itself, the facilities, and the kitchen, which is very underutilized. Very underutilized. It could be used for classes, for nutrition education, and it could serve the larger community. There have been a number of inquiries about using the kitchen. And now it's only used for a couple hours a day. It needs to be updated. A lot of stuff needs to be replaced and so forth. Another thing I really want to point out is our membership has grown. It is larger than it has ever been. It's now over 1,700 people. And again, that has happened in the last year, and I'm kind of very pleased about that. So we are really looking forward to, among other things, getting an afternoon receptionist because our staff is small. And right now we don't have anyone for the afternoon, so the very small staff is having to be at the front desk and manage the receptionist duties. So again, I want to thank you for your support and remind you that in planning, in terms of housing, in terms of park development, in terms of building in general, and in terms of making this a more walkable community, it's important that we keep older people in mind because it's a rapidly growing population. Are there any questions?
No, ma'am, but thanks for the update.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Great to see you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi. Put my sticker on the book here. So I'm Craig Mosher, and I grew up here in Iowa City, taught up at Luther and here at Iowa and stuff, and worked on sustainability up there. I am delighted that I was able to plug in my Nissan Leaf at the ramp across the street, so that was kind of nice, thanks to the city. And I also live at Prairie Hill, Iowa City Co-housing, where we're trying to build LEED certified, super energy efficient housing with no fossil fuels. I'm speaking for a couple of groups. One is the Johnson Clean Energy District, which is a new organization that's really trying to help the city meet the Climate Action Plan goals of making the housing stock much more energy efficient. And you'll be hearing more about that from us in the coming year. Also representing a group that's putting on an electric car fair here at the Farmers Market on the 14th of September on Saturday morning. So we'd urge people to come down. We'll have electric vehicles for people to see and talk with the drivers, the owners and stuff. Last year we had 3 Teslas show up from the Quad Cities at the last minute, so that was kind of exciting. So I really appreciate some things that the city's been doing. You've got a dozen electric cars, vehicles, the charging stations, of course, in all of the parking, almost all the parking ramps, and the state grant to do the regional readiness planning is a wonderful opportunity for us to work on this. And I really hope that you'll be able to give us an opportunity to provide some input as citizens to some of that process. And finally, it's wonderful to hear that Brenda Nations is working with this national group, trying to develop some readiness for planning for electric vehicles and so forth. So we'd be glad to help out in any way that we can to sort of provide information or whatever to those procedures. I also would like to ask several things. One is, of course, continuing to electrify as much of the city fleet as possible. That's really become much more financially doable these days, and I understand that some school districts in Iowa are now using some of the Volkswagen settlement money to buy electric school buses, which makes a lot of sense for a school bus. And they're not that much more, but the money makes the difference. And hopefully there will be some city buses that will be possible in the not too distant future that the city could purchase and move us towards the goal of an all-electric transportation system, which is where we have to go at this point. Also, of course, more charging stations would be really helpful, particularly the fast charging stations that Come and Go is starting to put in around the state that would draw people in off the interstate to shop and have coffee and eat while their car charges for 30 minutes and they can get back on the road. So I hope that some of those kind of things will be possible. And of course, we need to watch out for this upcoming tax on electric vehicle charging that I know you're all thinking about too. So, but thank you for all that you've done, and we look forward to working with you. So, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hi, Brandon.
First of all, I want to thank the City Council, the 7 of you. Of course, there's only 5 of you. 2 are on vacation. I wonder if it's with each other. I want to thank this particular City Council because this City Council, you 7, have actually changed things from the day-to-day business as usual kind of matters. And you deserve some credit. So I'd like to start there. You really do deserve some credit. I think that it was very hard. I think over the past 30 to 40 years that we've had a kind of Chamber of Commerce, very friendly and open, accessible council, but the people were kind of left behind in that period. And I think that you have done a good job of shifting and asking the questions, the important questions, and having the debates, whether you're all on the same side or you're not. Most of you had disagreements with each other, but I think this council was refreshing. And I'm just going to say that. I'm not going to say you're perfect because you know I'm going to have a complaint. So I don't like to call it a complaint, just a disagreement, or maybe. So anyway. So I also hope that people will come and vote for the elections that are coming up where Mayor Throgmorton is retiring from the council, and so is Councilman Rockne Cole. And I hope that you will just kind of leave all the presidential circus in the back of your mind somewhere, because we still have, I don't know, umpteen months to go, and think about local politics and come here, because, you know, folks, you can do a lot more in your own city than you can in a presidential election, which has been shown over and over and over again. So, and and when you vote, I hope that you'll vote that people who come into the council will also be socially conscious people, and that people who come into the council will be willing to give power to the bottom 3/4, say. Keep working those issues. We have problems here that I see that have to do with inequality. And, you know, even the 7 goals that are proposed, they sound very reasonable, and they are, but they all have something to do with money, getting money, everything's fine. At the end, it says advance social justice and racial equity. Now, is that supposed to mean equality, or is it equity, like you're making a financial transaction? What does that mean? Were we afraid of the word equality? Racial equality is something that should exist, and on that chart of 7, perhaps there should be an 8th, which says we will bring more equality. We will raise people up. You know, there was a woman who talked before me who talked about senior citizens' issues, and senior citizens, the handicapped, the people working regular jobs. Those are big issues. Housing is unaffordable in Iowa City, and landlords collude to make a false market. How do we fight against that? And the City Council is our protector. It's our buffer against that. So, you know I have a friend who's a landlord. I know that will make some of you really quizzical, but he is a landlord. And he had a certain price on his units. He doesn't have many. And he got a call from somebody. He knew him, but he barely knew him. And he said, "What are you doing charging that rate?" And they wanted him to raise his rates so that people wouldn't think that you could get lower rates in town. So don't think that this is some conspiracy. This is landlords collude and make a false market. The City Council helps people to be able to afford to live where they work. And most of the workers downtown, they can't afford the Chauncey, they can't afford the new buildings going up, and they can't afford most of everything else. So I want to encourage people. I want to encourage the council to continue to ask the good questions, continue to have the debates, and please keep in mind that you want to call it the 99% or the 75%, but most of the people down here really need to have affordable housing. We need to have affordable downtown. Thank you. And not only the downtown, but the south side. I don't want to make everything downtown, because the 7 goals actually seem to be talking a lot about the downtown, south side. So I hope that whoever comes in, I hope that people will vote, and that our future councilors will be earnest in helping people to be able to afford to live in the city. Thanks again, City Council.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, we'll move on to item 8, planning and zoning matters. Item 8A, rezoning south of Scott Boulevard and north of Tamarack Trail. This is an ordinance conditionally rezoning approximately 36.81 acres of land located south of Scott Boulevard and north of Tamarack Trail from interim development single-family residential, IDRS, to low-density single-family residential, RS5. Could I have a motion for second consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mims and seconded by Thomas. Let's take a brief moment here. We're waiting to connect with Rockne Cole. As I indicated at the start of our meeting, he would be phoning in and he'd be participating from a distance.
This is Rockne.
Hey, Rockne, this is Jim. So, hi, we've just opened second consideration of the Tamarack Trail rezoning.
Perfect.
Okay, and Danielle is on the verge of speaking. Hi, Danielle.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Danielle Sitzman, NDS. This is the second reading, so this will be brief. I just wanted to draw attention to a memo that was added to your packet following the last meeting on August 20th. There were some questions or discussion about the impact of existing traffic and vehicle speeds on Hickory Trail and whether the existing and proposed sections of Tamarack Trail should connect. Staff did prepare that memo that was in your packet tonight. It did include an estimate of the traffic to be generated by the development of 60 single-family lots. Using the Institute of Traffic Engineers Trip Generation Manual 9th edition. So there was a table in your memo that looked like this one, showing you the increased trip generation based on those 60 lots added to the existing total. There were also several scenarios that staff prepared to assign the travel paths to those additional trips. At the previous meeting, Kent Ralston had mentioned a 60-40 split, but he did also provide in your memo 3 other splits dividing up that traffic either more conservatively or more liberally between taking a path along Hickory or Tamarack. As you can see if in your memo, even with assuming the heaviest split between the two entrances, that would be scenario 1 where 80% is going to Hickory Trail and 20% to Tamarack. The end, assuming the heaviest time of day for travel, which would be the peak hours, either morning or afternoon, very little additional traffic is expected, only 1 additional vehicle for every 3 minutes. That would hardly be discernible to the average person observing traffic. And it's not expected to impact the level of service at the intersection of Hickory Trail and First Avenue. The memo did also mention the street network connections being regulated through the subdivision code and referenced a particular part of the subdivision code dealing with cul-de-sacs. Staff does not see any compelling demonstration of why the existing and proposed sections of Tamarack Trail should not be connected as proposed or required by our subdivision code at this time. So in summary, staff continues to feel that the proposed conditions that were endorsed by the Planning Commission adequately address any traffic-related concerns at this time during the consideration of the rezoning of the property to RS5. RS5 is our least dense district to provide housing for individual households within city limits where utilities are available. These are the 2 conditions that were placed on or recommended to you by the Planning Commission when this case came to you at first reading. I will just provide one other update. Staff did host a meeting this afternoon here at City Hall with the developer and some of the neighbors and city staff to continue to discuss their neighborhood's concerns about this development. The neighborhood may speak tonight, but our takeaway from that meeting as staff was that they were concerned about compatibility and were asking the developer to continue to consider changes to their subdivision plan that would come to you at a meeting in the future, encouraging the developer to continue to consider wider, larger larger lots, fewer lots, greater setbacks between the houses on those lots, and a physical separation between the extension of Tamarack from its current the new Tamarack Trail. So that really concludes staff report as far as the memo goes. Kent is also here tonight to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you, Danielle.
Okay, I have a question for you, Daniel. If you go back to the table that you have, here you said the difference between existing and proposed strip at Hickory Trail lot access, it is like those 1 plus 20. What kind of data did you use to come up with this?
So Kent can speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kent Ralston, Transportation Planner. So this table uses Institute of Traffic Engineers trip generation manual is what we use. So any developer in town, any traffic engineer, any transportation planner across the country would use basically the same information. It's pretty much the only information we have to actually look at a proposed development and actually estimate the amount of trips that it will produce.
Okay. Oh, you have like a standard.
Correct.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
No other questions for Danielle?
I had a question the last time around. I thought I had asked what the existing speeds were. Staff has given us the estimates as to how there might be a split in the additional trips generated. Do we have an understanding of what the actual existing speeds are?
We don't. I had mentioned at the last meeting, however, that we have a valid traffic calming petition, and staff will begin working through that this fall.
Okay, but we don't have it now.
Correct.
And Kent, that petition has to do with Hickory Trail?
Correct. Yes.
So,
and we would look at Tamarack Trail as well, just as part of that kind of the package. But yes, Hickory Trail, I think, was the primary concern.
Okay.
And then my other question, Danielle, you had mentioned at our last meeting that the concept for placing the circles was derived from language in our subdivision ordinance, which identified distances between intersections based on intersection design. Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned 600 feet. And so I was looking that up. The language there that I found was that there's a recommendation that the distances be anywhere between 300 feet and 600 feet. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be correct.
Right. So it's the minimum maximum. So you had mentioned the maximum, and
right.
There is a minimum dimension as well. I think that's it.
Okay, thanks. Would anybody else like to address this topic? Just reminds me of an old TV show where a person was supposed to stand up when somebody's name was given, and everybody pretend to be standing up, and then finally the right person would stand up. Okay, well, seeing no one else, we'll just turn to council discussion.
Is
This is the time to do it, please.
My name is Terry Protexter. I live at 1007 Tamarack Trail.
Terry, could you hold on for a second?
Absolutely.
Bruce, can you hear Terry right now?
Can you hear me, Bruce?
Yes, I can.
All right.
I can.
Thank you.
Calling Bruce. Basically, we had a chance after the last council meeting to go back and look at the comprehensive plan that you folks are using for your reference points for a lot of decisions. And we went back and looked at it, and I'm reproduced a little bit so you can really make out the street. This is coming off the comprehensive plan for the Bluffwood division. And just to give some people some bearings, you can see First Avenue. Well, this is 20-year-old map, so keep in mind some of this doesn't even exist yet today. First Avenue wanders up that way, and then Scott Boulevard around to the east, et cetera, and then Hickory Trail. And then if you go to that end of that circle, and I should probably have a pointer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, look at it, Terry. Sorry. Oh, hold it down, I'm sorry. This is basically Hickory Trail, Tamarack Trail right now. So if you look at that, and then you go ahead and take a look at what we added to that was the new development. And again, I want to repeat for the council's benefit the fact that we are not against the rezoning of this. We just have concerns about a number of other issues subsequent to that. We also plugged in the Harvest Preserve. And if you look at these, this is the comprehensive plan. This isn't on the table anymore. And this probably, the slope of the land and all the wooded areas probably will never be developed. So our question really is, and this just shows the current map from the and our question is, when you go back and look at the whole idea of the comprehensive plan, it talks about the fact that due to its limited terrain, et cetera, landowners, you have to be careful about, they were suggesting here in that highlighted section, to be careful about how you develop that area. We'll skip over to this. Also advancing the idea of traffic patterns for calming, et cetera, and I appreciate the city staff working on that with us and the developer. An interesting thing, designing collective streets so they're not contiguous through the streets, but are offset at the middle of the neighborhood. So in other words, we're suggesting to slow down traffic. There's a different way to handle it. And then you go back to cul-de-sacs. Everybody says cul-de-sacs are off the table. Interestingly enough, they're not off the table if you look at your comprehensive plan. If you look at conservation issues, go back and carefully read that. And I won't read it for you due to the limitation of my time here. But really, it's concerned about how the subdivision gets developed or the subdivisions get developed over time. And then specifically to us, the key point is cul-de-sacs are proposed where appropriate. So again, going back to the fact that open cul-de-sac, I'm not talking about closed cul-de-sac, I'm talking about open one. And then being sensitive to the natural green space, et cetera. And with initiative, a young lady spoke earlier about initiative for climate concerns. The more you build on property that used to be prairie grass, the less you have for CO2 if you read your botany textbooks. And this also talks about neighborhoods moving around, but not as a throughput as well, if you read it carefully. So I'm not going to belabor this, but if you go back and look at each one of these points, we're really concerned about how the comprehensive plan is used to make decisions. It has probably nothing to do with the discussion tonight per se, but please go back and look at that. I know Mr. Teague brought that up the other night, and he's concerned, and I think some of the other council members are concerned about how that is used as the benchmark for your decisions. And I caution you, as a citizen who really got entrenched in this, unbeknownst to me about 2 months ago, got entrenched in this, you really have to look at that and realize that comprehensive plan, it's 20 years out of date. Yeah, it's 20 years out of date. And what has been proposed for Bluffwood doesn't even exist and probably won't exist except for this one development. So please keep that in mind as you're pondering some of these issues down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Would any other neighbors or anyone else like to speak? Hi there.
Everybody. I'm Scott Rudy, 1035 Tamarack Trail. Anyway, Terry made some good points. And again, very quickly, we are not objecting to the zoning. We believe it is appropriate to zone there. We believe that it's appropriate to develop there. And I think Danielle led off with what we're hoping we can accomplish in that area from the standpoint of a compatibility with us and the neighborhoods. But going back to the comp plan that Terry's talking about, just real quickly, it talks in there about the erodible soils, about the conservation efforts that need to be taken in Bluffwood. On page 13 of the Northeast District, it talks directly to preserving natural features, sensitive areas, keeping sensitive areas as natural green spaces. It goes on. And as Terry said, no, the current plan that's out there, the comprehensive plan, does not fit this. And what I would ask is maybe we take a look at that. Where are we on the comprehensive plan, and what is it really going to be in the future? Look at it strategically as to what do we need it to be, what do we need it to look like. Is the program changed so much that we need to think about something different based on the fact that the comprehensive plan is not going to be achieved as it was written? So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else, so we're going to turn to council discussion, and remember what we're doing here is second consideration of the ordinance. There'll be a third reading 2 weeks from tonight, depending on how this vote goes tonight. Council discussion.
Well, I'll just pick up on my questions to staff, and to repeat what my position was 2 weeks ago on this project was that in general I support the application with my concerns really focusing on what I would say would be the speeds of the vehicles running through the the extension of Tamarack Trail onto Hickory Hill Trail. When I look at the current street layout of the Bluffwood area with First Avenue, Scott Boulevard, and Rochester defining the boundaries of that area, from what I can tell, all of the development is reached with cul-de-sacs. There aren't any through streets. So by creating the Tamarack Trail addition, that will provide the one through street which will run from one arterial to another. Now, we've said that we don't expect to see through traffic, at least this is my impression based on the discussions, we're not expecting, based on where those points of connection are on First Avenue and Scott Boulevard, that there will be any through traffic. My concern is, like the budget, traffic systems are also complex systems. We just don't know. I don't know. I would be unwilling to say with great confidence that there might not be over time the use of this through connection through the neighborhood, and thus generating not simply additional trips due to the addition, but also trips coming from other points of going through the neighborhood on their way to somewhere else. So the concern I have then is with the speed, as I mentioned before. And so Danielle mentioned that the basis for the traffic circles, which are a traffic calming concept, were derived from the distances provided in the subdivision standards, which call for intersections every 300 to 500 feet. And what I've, based on my calculations, that more or less applies, with the one exception being from the existing cul-de-sac at the end of Tamarack Trail to the first proposed traffic circle at Buckledown Circle. So that distance is approximately 800 feet. So my recommendation or request would be that since that exceeds the 600-foot maximum dimension, that a additional circle be installed at the midpoint between those two traffic circles, which would result in a distance between them of about 400 feet, which is approximately what you see intersection or block lengths in the original layout of Iowa City are roughly 400 feet. So to give everyone an idea of what that would mean. So that's really the only change I'm suggesting at this time. I have concerns with the through traffic. I think the concept or potential for that, I'm sympathetic to the idea of, in the future, if we find that there is additional traffic being generated by this connection, that a remedy be sought along the lines of putting in some kind of diverter which would allow emergency vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians to pass through, but would restrict vehicular traffic. I don't see that being necessary now, but it is something that I could see, depending upon what might happen, the need to try to limit the number of vehicles that will drive on this particular stretch of road.
And John, you know, in recommending that, it's a change that would require agreement on the part of the developer. Is that correct, Eleanor?
We've included that in the conditional zoning agreement, the existing ones on the concept plan.
So I understand, but John's suggesting
yes, we would have to change the conditional zoning agreement unless we have the ability within the subdivision standards to impose that. And it sounds like not, which is why we imposed it as a condition. So yes.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to be clear about that, not stifle conversation or anything. Anybody else want to offer observations or questions or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I supported this before, and I will continue to. And I'm concerned about the traffic and the speeds potential, but we have a lot of long residential streets in this community, and one of the first ones that struck my mind is Friendship Street. I mean, Friendship Street is very long. Yes, it does have more side streets off from it, I grant you that. But I have to believe an awful lot of that traffic that comes in onto Friendship comes all the way to First Avenue if it's coming from the east. And I think in trying to concentrate on the actual issue before us tonight, it is rezoning. And both of the members of the community who live in that area said they are not against the rezoning. So I think it's important that, number one, we support the rezoning tonight. Number two, I think it's important as we go forward that we keep track of what's happening in that neighborhood, and I realize it's a downward hill, you know, coming down from Scott, so the potential for greater speeds. I think we need to definitely keep an eye on that. I'm sure the neighborhood will let us know. We already have an approved proposal or request, so that we'll do some traffic calming investigation, and we may need to do more of that. And I think just like any street in our city, and particularly new streets where we don't necessarily know what all the traffic ramifications are, we need to keep looking at that as time goes by and traffic patterns change. I personally am not real concerned about cut-through traffic. I think when you've got a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on Scott, 25, which most people don't go on First Avenue with no houses on it, that they're going to take that path versus cutting through a neighborhood with house after house after house in a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I would really doubt that cut-through traffic is going to be an issue. But again, coming back to the focus of what we are here to vote on tonight, and even having the neighbors say they're not against the rezoning, I think we need to rezone and then keep our eyes on the traffic issues as we go forward.
I think the traffic, concerns are very valid for us to consider, but definitely not in this part. Right now, we're really looking at the rezoning, and there were some things mentioned tonight, which I've mentioned in the past. Our comprehensive plan, we need to look at it. We need to redo it because a lot of it is outdated. We need the community to come forward and talk about the comp plan and that type of stuff. But again, we're not talking about that tonight for this rezoning. So I will continue to support this. I think it's kind of nice to see that neighbors are supporting the development per se, and so I will support it tonight.
Thanks, Bruce. Rockne, are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here. So, as everyone present knows, I did have some concerns about the density. I do feel as a community at some point in the future, we're going to have to really seriously evaluate whether we ever have in the future sort of a purely single-family development. I'm a big fan of single family. I think it can be an extraordinarily important part of a development, but I also think there should be different housing types. But Jim, as you had, or Mayor, as you had pointed out, I do think that is a discussion for another day. I think it's important that we don't have, expectations that aren't clearly set out in our planning document. And because we also need to be as predictable as we can, and we try our best to do that. And so I am going to support it. I primarily because I think we need to be as predictable as we can. And I am persuaded that this discussion about what type of single-family zones we have is really something for another day. So that is going to be my position at this point. But I do think it's a conversation that we do need to have. And as I indicated to the neighbors last night, that be careful what you wish for, because if I had my preference and we were considered in my time left on council, I would really want a more denser development. So I think it may be a blessing in disguise in terms of the development that we have here. But otherwise, I think it looks good. So I am going to support it.
Okay, thanks, Rockne.
I really guess I did not support this last time, but I really want to ask you a question here, because last time, I'm not objecting by any means the rezoning, and now just Susan Mims saying this is just for the rezoning. And again, the same question I raised last time, and you told me that we cannot change anything later because this will be a major change or something like that, I remember. And that's why I did not support it, because even if I support the rezoning now and all this question come by the residents, if we kept it for later, and can we talk about it? We can't, right? Because this is we have to change the whole plan. I guess that's what it was last time.
Eleanor, why don't you respond to that? Because it's kind of a legal question about what we can change at what time.
Like all the concern that the residents have right now. I'm just saying that I'm not objecting to the rezoning, but Susan just said this is only the rezoning, and even the residents are not objecting about it. Is that means whatever concern the residents have right now, it could be addressed later if we pass the rezoning tonight?
The rezoning is about density, and if you believe it's in accordance with the comprehensive plan and it should be RS5 zoned, then you need to approve the rezoning. I can't tell you that all the residents' concerns can be dealt with at a later date. There may be some agreements that can be reached with the developer. There may be some wiggle room within our subdivision standards, although the availability of a cul-de-sac seems very slim to me when I look at those standards. So I can't tell you that I think you need to legally vote for the rezoning, but I can't tell you that down the road that you can do that and that all the residents' issues will be dealt with.
Yeah, I really am not objecting to rezoning, but as long as we can address the concern of the resident later, that's what it is.
Maybe I can elaborate on that. I don't think you can effectively address what they're asking for later. Wider lots is, if you want our single-family homes to have wider lots, you'd have to adjust that standard with the text amendment to the code. The lot sizes that they're proposing are permitted by our code. So the developer cannot be compelled to adjust the widths of lots.
I understand, but even if the developer and the resident come with agreement.
Oh, sure.
They can come and change it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a minimum standard for lot size. So, yes, the developer could choose to increase the width of the lots. I don't think that's probably likely. I think they've put forward a concept plan that meets our city standards, and that's probably what their intention is to build. Likewise, I don't think we could compel them to install additional traffic circle or other traffic calming measures that someone may think up. We did that up front with the conditions. We identified this as a potential issue when the application was first received by staff. We worked with the developer and then through the P&Z process to put in those traffic calming measures, street trees, traffic circles. And to me, that time has come and gone. So you're probably very likely to go through the platting process and see exactly what you're looking at here. So we are focused on the rezoning, but I don't want to give false hope to anybody out there that it's going to be drastically different when it comes back. And when it comes back and it meets all the code requirements, I don't think you have a choice but to approve that.
So,
Okay, can I ask the resident question? I just want to ask you if you really have a meeting with the developer and you're going to continue having meeting to discuss all the needs that you are referring to, because as he said, if we approve this, there is really no lot of help from our part to change anything unless you come, developer, and you come with agreement and bring it to us. That's going to be the case, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Please state your name and write it down too.
Good evening, Christy Teal. Thank you for the opportunity to address you and answer your question. So several of the neighbors this afternoon had a meeting with the developer, Joe Clark, as well as the landowner, Doug Paul, and several members of the city staff included here. You want to raise your hand if you were there? The neighbors tried very hard to have an open discussion with the developer regarding the lot sizes. Some of the comments that I can repeat that Mr. Clark made were, I didn't propose this as a multifamily development. If I would have come in with that as a design, then you'd be happy with what I was proposing now as a single-family home. Once the houses I'm just here to develop the land. I'm not selling I'm selling the plots. I'm not the builder. So whatever the builder decides to do on the land is the builder's choice, and I will have no input in that. Doug Paul said that the residents, and keep in mind, I've only been there 2 months, but he said the residents, especially those on Tamarack Trail for the last almost 20 years, have enjoyed country living, but we need to recognize that we live in Iowa City, and if we want country living, we should move to the country. I found that there was a great deal of immovability on the part of the developer as well as the landowner to come to any kind of compromise with the neighbors. And upon reflection, I realized, as Joe Clark said, he has ticked all the boxes by the Planning and Zoning Commission and made amendments to the platting to accommodate their request. He's accommodated the city staff's request, but nowhere in there do I see that there's any kind of accommodation of the neighbor request. And I would actually like to suggest that that be an amendment to the code when neighborhoods are being added to existing neighborhoods, that the current neighbors actually have a voice in the process. Perhaps even a vote at the table, not just as we're here today discussing with the council. But yeah, overall, there seemed to be no wiggle room. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess since I heard this, even though my vote is not going to make big difference if I voted no, today, but I'm going to continue voting no because I really want to see that developer come and negotiate with the residents, because they are the current residents, and I know the law. He's not breaking anything. He just proposing something that consistent with the comprehensive plan. But I always care about the value of not only the law. There is a heart to the law too, not only that. That's why I was hoping that you guys negotiated together, and it seemed like this is not going to happen. That's why I'm going to continue voting no to this project.
Okay, thanks. Pauline?
Well, just like the last time, I had voted for this because the residents had said that they didn't have a problem with the rezoning as such, which is what we are allegedly voting on today, but it is distressing to me to hear this young woman say that they feel like they have no voice and there's no compromise, and basically it's a done deal, because I think what Congressman Mazza here was trying to get at was, at what point can they have some say, and what point can we as councilors have a say in what this development's going to look like. So that is concerning to me, but since we've been given the direction that what we're truly voting on is the rezoning, but I did have some concerns about that, as John had mentioned the speeds, and in several of your letters that you had sent to us, you talked about the speeds on your current street, and so there was talk of the traffic calming measures and what to do about that. And I had a question, because at one point in the P&Z minutes it talked about 90 trees being planted, but then in the this seems like a small detail, but then in the conditional zoning agreement and another point was mentioned 75 trees. Danielle, do you know the answer to that?
Sure. We were given some leeway to kind of negotiate the exact arrangement, and what the result was is the trees will be planted on Tamarack, but not the spur. I think it's called something with a B, the little side street. Those will not have trees planted on them. The traffic calming was more important for the main north-south street than the spur to the west. So it reduced the number of trees in the total.
Okay, that's how the reduction came about. Okay. And also what I wanted to point out was that whatever's decided, I think it's going to be important that that First Avenue Scott Boulevard proposal that was mentioned also a couple times in the discussion, that it is in our budget 2021 for intersection improvement. And I think we would need to make that a priority on our list of things to get done if this development goes through, because it's going to be important, I think.
If I could, Mayor, could I make one comment?
Sure.
I hope that the council realizes that when staff gets an initial application for development, we don't just send it through to the Planning and Zoning Commission as is. Rarely, if ever, does it get through staff without some type of modification. We try to anticipate through our experiences what the impacts to the neighborhood would be, and then we look to mitigate those issues. So what you're seeing before you isn't necessarily what the developer's first choice was. He probably submitted an application that checked all the boxes, but that staff wouldn't support without those additional conditions and changes, which were the traffic circles and the narrower road width and the tree planting. Those are things that we thought that would enhance the application and be better for the overall environment. So a lot of that negotiation on what is best for the neighborhood takes place here in the walls of City Hall. Now, clearly, we don't know the neighborhood as well as the neighbors themselves, but we do a lot of this, and I hope you recognize that's part of our role, is to push forward applications that not only meet the code, but that are going to be found to be compatible in the long run with the existing neighborhood.
If I could translate just a little bit, do I understand correctly that the developer would have been within his right to submit a proposed rezoning that had wider streets, had no cul-de-sacs, or not cul-de-sacs, had no traffic circles, had no street trees, and the staff could have said, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's not what happened.
Right.
Right. So I think, the point is that there's already been adjustment that acknowledges many of the concerns of the neighbors who live in that area. Not all of them, that's for sure, but many of them. So, did you want to say something else, Maz?
But have you said something at all?
No, I'm just going to conclude, but go ahead.
No, I just want to just tell you that, yeah, I understand that the staff could have done some adjustment, but that's the staff. And we, as a council, we have the final say, even if they check all the boxes. And it was really full in the law, and they did everything right as it should be. But at the end of the day, it's us. We can just put a little pressure so they can compromise something that will meet the resident needs. I just want to say, yes, they do everything right. The developer having done something against the law. I understand that. But we are the final decision maker, and we've been elected by the people, and we have to listen to the people. That's what I always, not to the developer. I guess we have to listen to us, but we have to listen to the people who elected us.
So I want to introduce another fact that, and if I'm wrong about what I say, Eleanor, would you please correct me, because I'm going to make sort of a legal statement. Mm-hmm. It's my understanding that if we chose to deny this rezoning, even though it is a proposed rezoning to the lowest residential zoning in the city, we would be opening the city up to a takings claim by the developer, saying, in other words, a claim that we have taken private property without due compensation. And these are words and concepts that come out of the U.S. Constitution and years of adjudication. So we can't really reject the proposed rezoning, given the fact that it's proposed to rezone the property to the lowest possible residential density. The only question that could be resolved in some other fashion has to do with whether the roadway would be broken, if you will, a cul-de-sac at both ends. And I personally don't think that's wise, for all sorts of reasons, and one of the reasons has to do with the pretty small amount of traffic that is going to be generated by the proposed subdivision. And so given those points, I'm going to support the rezoning. But I want to ask Danielle another question, so maybe you could come up and, the answer surely will be pretty brief. So if after we vote tonight and if after we vote in a similar way next time and approve the rezoning, what are the next steps? And are there any ways that the residents, the neighbors, can have input into those, especially the first next step?
Mm-hmm. So the next step is the preliminary plat. That application has actually already gone through the Planning Commission. So they've already had an opportunity to speak before the Planning Commission, the neighbors have, on the preliminary plat. That will come to you on or about the time of third reading of the rezoning. It may come shortly after that, just depending on paperwork and when things get finally filed. Then there's a final plat that comes in that does not go to the Planning Commission. It goes just to your body and is generally on your consent agenda and does not receive comment. So those would be the next steps in the approval.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I think we've heard what people needed to say, and unless there's some objection from the council, it's time to vote.
I just wanted to follow up on Jeff's comment. I really appreciate the approach staff has taken on trying to address what I see to be one of the uncertainties with respect to the project, and that is the vehicle speeds going through the proposed development. My concern is, following up on what Susan said, is if we do find that there are higher vehicle speeds on this stretch of roadway, the ability to address that issue integrally with a traffic circle will have passed. And so what we will most likely see would be a speed hump. Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of consequence that I'm concerned with, and why I was suggesting that we looking at the subdivision ordinance, which was the reference point for the spacing, consider that. It's a refinement in my view. I really like the concept as developed. It just seemed to me there was a concern that when you have an 800-foot spacing, the likelihood or possibility of speeds accelerating, as Susan also mentioned, this is a down slope, increase because of the distance between the deflections at the circles. So anyway, I just want to make it clear that I think the concept is really sound.
I have a question for the staff, basically, and maybe Kent's the person to answer it, but it really has to do with speed bumps as a traffic calming measure. They work pretty well. I tend to slow down every time I encounter a speed bump. So it would seem, this is my question really, is the idea of installing a speed bump near the southern boundary of the proposed subdivision, Could that be something incorporated into a preliminary plat, assuming the developer supports it? Or is that something the city itself has to do?
I think legally, he has the ability, the developers have the ability to bring back a plat that has that incorporated into it. Whether or not we could require that, I don't know the answer to that. I don't really believe we could require it. We could just suggest that that's a good idea.
That's what I
the
thought you'd
street-
say.
But you're right, the street will be dedicated to the city, and if there was a need for a speed hump down the road, that could be put in
Right.
at
So
the
I was-
city, in the city's
Correct.
discretion.
Yeah, I understood that, the city could do that on its own after it's dedicated to the city, but I was wondering about the preliminary moment when the preliminary plat is being prepared.
Yeah.
So it's something the developer could consider, right?
Yeah, and the only issue that I'm not perfectly clear on is if the preliminary plat's already gone through P&Z, there might be a bit of a disconnect there. I'd have to ask Danielle about that. But if the preliminary plat has gone through P&Z and it didn't have that incorporated into it, it may have to go back to P&Z. But that's something Danielle could answer.
It'd be worth looking into, it seems to me.
I think what the conversation reflects, though, is that these are all issues that really need to be dealt with either at the subdivision stage or in the conditions which you've already approved, or at a subsequent time when the property's been dedicated to the city and the city has control of the right-of-way, not at a rezoning stage, because you're looking at denying them the use of the property at the lowest density the city offers.
Okay.
And I would also, just from a timing standpoint, discourage trying to make changes to the preliminary plat. That speed hump, if it's needed, is certainly something that the city can do after the street's been dedicated. And I don't think it warrants potentially holding up the process.
Okay, any further conversation? Rockne, Bruce, either one of you, want to add anything else?
Nope, I'm ready to vote.
Yep. How about you,
I'm good
Bruce?
here.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mims?
Yes.
Salee?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
No.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Motion carries, what's that, 5-2?
6-2.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wouldn't be 6-2. It'd be
6-1.
No, Thomas. John
Thomas and
voted
you
no.
were no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 5-2 in favor, right? Okay, thank you, everybody. Could I have a motion to accept correspondence, please?
Second.
Moved by Sway, seconded by Mims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we can move to item 9, FY 2020 Budget Amendment, Public Hearing. This is a resolution amending the current budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. I'll open the public hearing.
And Jim, I am going to have to go, okay?
Sure, understand. Thanks, Rockne.
All right. Thank you, everyone. All right, take care.
Jacqueline Budding, Finance Admin. So this is the first amendment for the fiscal year 2020. Budget amendment is made up of 3 main components, the first being carry forward requests from FY19 budget. The requests are submitted by departments, reviewed by the city manager's office and finance department. The second component being CIP carry forwards. Most projects align more with calendar year versus the fiscal year, and some are multi-year projects. The third component being other small various amendments. For revenues, some of the larger amendments include intergovernmental revenues, about $5.7 million, vast majority made up of state and federal grant carry forwards on CIP projects and home and CDBG carry forwards. Other financing sources was amended by about $1.7 million for university home sales and the sale of land. And then transfers in were amended by $2.8 million for CIP project carry forwards and increased to public works loan. On the expenditure side, one of the larger increases were governmental capital projects for about $40 million, made up of various CIP projects for the Public Works Facility, McAllister Boulevard, and Myrtle Riverside intersection. Also, business type and enterprise activities for $11 million. Major CIP projects include generator relocation and sewer projects. Another large amendment was for community and economic development for about $2 million. Includes carry forwards for CDBG and home and university program. And in conclusion, as I mentioned, this is the first budget amendment for fiscal year 20. The overall total impact to fund balance is a decrease of $46,478,000, which is covered through excess fund balances and bonds and will not affect property tax levies. Questions?
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Do you all understand what a carry forward is? I don't know if we've used that term with you before, but a carry forward is essentially when you have a expense or a revenue that you received in a particular year, but because that project is not complete in that fiscal year, you have to carry it forward to the next fiscal year. So you think of a project like Gateway, we may have received federal funds a year before the Gateway project started or in the first year of Gateway project, but we had to carry those funds forward. You think about like our local option sales tax dollars, right? We collected those from 09 to 13, and then every year we had to carry those dollars forward as we expended them on the project. So it's very common, a term that we use as staff in City Hall, but it's, again, just recognizing that you don't always spend, or the money you receive doesn't always get spent in the year it's received, and you have to push that forward.
Great, thanks. Did anybody have any questions for Jacqueline?
No.
Me neither. Anybody else like to address this topic? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Or not?
Yeah.
What are you doing there, Charlie? Are you leaving? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
Move.
Moved by Mem, second by Soleil, I guess. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Discussion. Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Salee?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. What's the right word? Absent. Item 10, e-bikes and e-scooters in parks. This is an ordinance amending Title 10 entitled Public Ways and Property, Chapter 9 entitled Parks and Recreation Regulations, to provide for the operation of electric assist bicycles, electric scooters, and electric skateboards in parks. This is first consideration. Could I have a motion for first consideration,
Move first
please?
consideration.
Second.
Moved by Mem, seconded by Thomas. Discussion.
You've got staff.
Darian, hi.
Oh, Darian. Hi there.
I should
Good
look
evening.
up.
Darian Nagel-Gam, Transportation Services. Just really briefly, you recently have, we've come to the council with ordinance amendments to enable the use of electric assist bicycles, electric scooters, and electric skateboards, so you might wonder why you see this on your agenda this evening. We had previously brought those items to you to clarify that they should be allowed and to legally enable them to operate in the public right-of-way on streets and on sidewalks where appropriate. This is just to clarify that that also includes parkland where bicycles are also allowed.
Great. Any questions for Darian?
No, exciting.
I have a question for you, which perhaps you can answer, and maybe Jeff or someone else, but I wonder if you could let us know what the plans are for installing bike racks in city parks. In most that I've gone into recently, there aren't any bike racks, so I started thinking, why is that?
Can handle that. We've been doing it with our park renovations on a park-by-park basis. So I think you mentioned you visited Creekside Park today. If you were to go out there, you'd see the bike racks, and sometimes we have fix-it stations there as well. So it's really a park-by-park basis. If we're going to go in there and do renovations, we'll add the bike racks, and then we'll also do them upon request if we get a resident or a group that would like to see them or more of them in a park, we'll add them.
Sound good?
Yeah, good. Well, I'll follow up. This afternoon, I was driving back from having a conversation with Maz and I was coming back on Muscatine, and I just looked to my left and saw Creekside Park, and I thought, well, what the heck? It looks to me like it's done. I've understood that it was done. I'm going to go and take a look. So I did, and it looks great. So one of the first things I noticed, other than the ensemble, was bike racks.
Yeah.
And then the fix-it station and tire pump thing. And then a big, beautiful basketball court. My gosh, if I would have given an arm and a leg as a youth to be able to have a basketball court like that near where I lived. And what else? I mean, everything about it looks true. Oh, yeah, recycling containers, too. I've wondered the same thing about our parks. Why don't they all have recycling containers? So the answer is they're being rolled in, basically, right, by the renovations.
Yeah, now the recycling containers we're not waiting on those. Those should be all out. I'm not sure if every small neighborhood park has them, but certainly the major parks should have recycling containers by now.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Salee?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 11, Council Liaison to the Community Police Relations Board. This is an ordinance amending Title 8 entitled Police Regulations, Chapter 8 entitled Community Police Review Board to create, to create a city council liaison. This is pass and adopt. Could I have a motion, please?
Move.
Second.
Moved by Slay, seconded by Thomas. Discussion.
Well, I'll just reiterate very quickly my position from before. I think I'm probably the only one voting against this. I don't like the precedent this is setting. I think people should feel free, and I think most people do on these commissions, to come talk to people. And I don't, in particular, the language, and I emphasized that last time, and even Mr. Townsend, I think, recognized that the language of the ordinance, or the resolution, is not, of the ordinance, excuse me. CPRB, I think, wrote it and would suggest that they would be either having input or selecting replacements, and implies that the council would get involved in problems if there's issues with the way the commission is working, and I don't think that's an appropriate role for the council, so I'll be voting against it.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I support it, and I'm happy to support it again.
As I'd said before, initially I was not in favor of this because I didn't really understand the purpose either, but giving it more thought, I thought we could give it a try, sort of a trial for the first year, and see how it goes. If it's not utilized, then it's probably not necessary.
Bruce or John, do either one of you want to say anything? Bruce, do you want to say anything?
I've supported it before, and again, I think that what's being asked, we can certainly put it into the ordinance. And again, I think all of us are going to be monitoring it, who's ever on council. But I think it's an opportunity this is a pretty important board, and that we have, and I think it's vital that we give it a shot and we go from there. So I am going to support it tonight.
Thank you. So I have voted against this ordinance twice in the two previous meetings for reasons very similar to yours, Susan, and I articulated them as clearly as I can. In general, I thought we could find a better way to accomplish the admirable objectives associated with this particular proposal. Tonight, however, I will vote in favor of it out of respect for the CPRB members and the unique concerns that come before the board. So I will vote in favor. Any further discussion?
I just want to point out, because I just heard Pauline said to give it a try, and we go from there. I guess we are voting to implement it.
Right.
Not like to give it 1 year or 2 year.
We're voting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Teague,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Throgmorton,
Yes?
Mims,
No.
Salee,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1, and it passes 5-1. Item 12, Electric Assist Bike Share Agreement. This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign and the city clerk to attest a contract for bike sharing services between the City of Iowa City and Gotcha Mobility, LLC. Okay, who's Gotcha and why do they?
You'll be seeing a lot of gotcha in the future around town. It's a clever name. Clever name. So tonight you'll be considering authorizing an agreement with Gotcha Mobility for the provision of a dockless electric assist bike share for public use in Iowa City. And of course, the goal of the bike share is to provide a healthy, safe, affordable, and easily accessible transportation options for residents and visitors to reduce demand on our roadways, vehicle congestion, greenhouse gas emissions. So, introducing this bike share is going to really help us reach those goals that have been articulated in our Bike Master Plan and also in the Climate Action Plan, which of course calls for a shift of 55% of vehicle trips with sustainable options such as public transportation, bicycles, or pedestrian trips by 2050 in order to meet our greenhouse gas emission goals. And as I mentioned, the bike share is going to be comprised of electric assist bicycles. We've been talking a lot about electric assist bicycles over the last couple months. And just a reminder, it's nothing that requires a big learning curve. There's no throttle. It's simply a pedal assist activated electric assist. So the harder that you press into the pedals, the more assistance you get. So for example, if you're climbing a hill, you'll get more electric assistance from the motor than you would if you're on a flat road. They're gaining in popularity. As you might imagine, it makes riding a bicycle a breeze to do, really, and much more enjoyable. It makes the distance that people can travel more reasonable, and it can provide a real alternative to an automobile. So we're excited to bring this partnership into town. The public is going to be able to locate and access, check out the vehicles, the electric assist bikes, if you will, using a smartphone app. You can either pay per ride, or there's monthly programs, monthly fee programs. You could pay by month, or you can pay for an annual fee too. You can have a subscription for the whole year. That's included with a certain amount of ride time each day, and a small per cost fee if you go over, say, an hour per day. There is an income qualified equity program that we'll be initiating with this as well, and there also is a way that users can access it without a smartphone. So we haven't left those behind who don't have access to smartphones, but certainly the smartphone will be the easiest way. You'll be able to find a bike and take a ride. A question we often get about bike shares in general is the parking. How do you encourage the orderly parking? One of the reasons this vendor, I think, will be a particularly good fit in this community is because they use geofencing technology, and the old bike share systems were docked, where you literally would park a bike into a system that was at one location, and the benefit was everybody knew where to put the bikes and everybody knew where to get them at. A dockless system allows for more flexibility, and that's really the type of system we're looking at. But with this geofencing technology, we can literally identify in our city the places we want to have them parked at. We want to designate them to be parked at spatially, and the GPS transponders will know if they are parked within an area that we have identified as a place where they should be parked at. So it really helps encourage orderly parking and making sure that people know where they're at, they're not blocking the pedestrians' paths, and so on. Another question we get often is, who will be responsible for moving the bikes around? This is really a Gotcha operation. We're enabling them to operate in our right-of-way, and we'll certainly be working with them, but the day-to-day operations will be the vendor. What they do is called rebalance. They go out every day and they move the bikes from areas of lower demand back to the areas of where the maximum demand is. And of course, because of this technology, the GPS receiver, they always know where the bikes are at, and they know where people are going. So they have this sort of infinite data set of an understanding for how people are using their system. The initial focus is going to be in the downtown and near downtown areas where we perceive there's going to be the greatest demand. And then our goal is to work with the vendor on strategies to sort of build out the access through the neighborhoods and the other commercial areas throughout the community. And following the approval of this agreement, staff will host a kickoff meeting with the vendor and will outline the steps towards the launch, which is a 90-day window as outlined in the contract, and we expect it'll be towards the tail end of that. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the upcoming bike share.
I just want to ask you, first, when this will be starting, do you know? Have any?
Well, the contract states a 90-day window, and we've been given indications it will likely be towards the end of that. So that's the best. We don't have a launch date settled yet, but
Sure.
we'll be discussing more soon. Yeah.
And is this like around like the whole city or just downtown?
I think we'll start in the downtown and near downtown areas, and then determine how best to enable areas where the bicycles can be parked at, more or less, in the neighborhoods, and figure out how to integrate the entire community. I think we should start in the downtown and really get our processes down, and then just start basically radiating outward and providing more and more access.
Yeah, and how the people will know there is income qualify? Do you have like a way you can advertise this or?
Yes, there will be, as part of the launch, there's going to be a pretty robust marketing education campaign to let the public know about this transportation option. We haven't determined yet what the qualifiers are. We'll do that after we meet with the vendor team as a customer. But we have expressed that, and we've put language into the agreement that it must be a mutually agreed upon set of qualifiers, set of criteria to qualify for the low-income equity program.
I really encourage the people to, like, now you said it's going to start during downtown and like the places near downtown, but really this will be like much needed at the low-income neighborhood and the people who are really in need of this because they can use it, and especially if they have discount on the, like, as you said, there is some kind of discount for low income. And I hope if you, like, when you start expanding, you will like, really identify the community that needs or the area that really people will need it. So you can start with that area.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see the low-income qualification. I mean, $5 annually, that is fantastic. And yeah, hopefully there's not a big problem in terms of coming to that mutual agreement on the qualifier. That is my only concern. And I would agree with Maza here. I mean, I understand and agree with starting at downtown where you think you have the most demand, but I think it's essential that as quickly as possible we can start trying to get them out into the neighborhoods. And I would agree, with the low-income neighborhoods where they would probably have the most demand. But trying to get the bearings and get processes figured out, I understand makes sense. And here we are at the beginning of September, and if the contract isn't quite yet signed and they're talking 90 days, let's be realistic, September, October, November, we're getting into the cold weather where we're not necessarily going to see a lot of demand for a few months. So actually that might be good in terms of figuring out some things, and maybe it'll just delay figuring those out. I'm not sure.
When you say greater downtown, what does that mean?
Well, we haven't specified exactly, and we haven't had those acute launch conversations yet about where and when. We just know that we're probably going to see the most demand, and we want to keep the initial area manageable so we can observe it. But certainly our goal is to expand it and make it available throughout downtown. So we don't have a certain neighborhood in mind or, a certain. We just imagine that downtown and near downtown will be the places where we sort of get things situated. We start understanding how to operate with these new vehicles in the right of way, and then our goal is to really expand it and provide that, improve the access for the entire community.
Yeah, I guess like when you say downtown, near downtown, like it will come up to me that will be used by student. Nothing against student in Austin, but I mean like really we need other people on the community and the resident of Iowa City to be using it too. Yeah.
I think a strong point on that is the it would be considered the neighborhood associations. The South District Neighborhood Association has very strong membership now, and they have the Broadway Center there, as well as the Pheasant Ridge has a very nice neighborhood center there. So I think considering those kinds of areas that have strong centers. I did have a question in your memo. It mentioned it's going to coordinate with the university e-bike launch. Are they using the same company?
Yeah, the goal is for us to all, we've been sort of working through this effort together with the university, so the goal is that we have a coordinated launch all together. So yes, we have been working with them, and we're launching with the plan is to launch with the same company. I don't think they're quite as far along as we are today.
And is there plans for the company to have like a brick and mortar location in town somewhere?
That's a great question. Yes, they I don't know if it would be a storefront, but they do have a space. They usually acquire physical space in the communities. They hire staff from the community. That will be part of their launch process. But they do need space to work on the bicycles, just to maintain them, to store them. The amount of bicycles on the road can change seasonally. So they need a place to put them for, if it's an ice storm comes in, they actually will take them off the roads. You will see them disappear from the right of way when it's unsafe to ride, that sort of situation. So they do need some physical space.
That's what I thought. And I also had thought they would probably need something if they said there would be access for those with no smartphone or credit card, that they'd be able to use cash. So there would have to be some means for somebody, a body, to help them out.
Yeah, that's usually done through a partnership, and the partnerships, I haven't seen all the specifics of this program with Gotcha, but in other programs, there's ways that services are offered through drugstores, and they partnered with them. So I don't know all the details, but I know it was CVS or Walgreens was what enabled what enabled those transactions to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Bruce, did you want to say anything?
No, it's very exciting to have this in our community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Darian, I'm sure you did a fair amount of work on this, so thanks for all your efforts, and whoever else was involved on the part of city government. It's a great initiative. I really look forward to seeing it work well, and I absolutely hope that it does. Yeah, and I'm confident it will. So thanks for everything you've done. But I do want to ask you a question. Sorry, I shouldn't have left you in the lurch like that. A few days ago, I saw 3 students riding bright yellow new bicycles downtown. And I was wondering if they were identical, so it looked like some coordinated effort. And I was wondering if you knew anything about that.
I do not. You may have stumped me, and the fact that there's 3 of them does lead me to believe that they were somehow connected by some program, but I'm not aware of a Yellow Bike program, but I will keep an eye out.
Okay, good deal. Thanks. It's not going to affect my vote. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
We get a motion.
Any further discussion? What?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? We didn't do a motion?
We did.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. So could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mem, second by Soy. And we've had a discussion. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes?
Mims?
Yes.
Salee?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 13, announcement of vacancies, previous. Board of Adjustment, we have 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term effective upon appointment, and applications for that position must be received by 5 p.m. Tuesday, September the 24th of this year. We also have 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term effective upon appointment to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term effective upon appointment to the Telecommunications Commission. Applications for those positions must be received by 5 p.m. Tuesday, September the 10th of this year. We also have 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term to the Airport Zoning Board of Adjustment, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term to the Historic Preservation Commission's East College Street District, and 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term on the Historic Preservation Commission's Woodlawn District. These vacancies will remain open until filled, which gets us to item 14, community comment. Austin?
Hello there, everyone. Austin Wu, U.S. Student Government City Liaison. First, I just want to say the first week of classes has wrapped up, so congratulations to everyone who's made it through that. I'm excited about the return of football season last weekend and the fall weather. Broken out the cardigans. It's wonderful. And then I have 2 points to make about the bicycles. First, on the yellow ones, I wonder, I've seen by the Graduate Hotel, they have some bikes for rental. So the bikes you saw had baskets out front, and they kind of look like Dutch Roadsters. They might be from there.
I don't remember their appearance that well, just bright yellow.
Oh, okay. So that's one theory. And then the second is on the bike share. I'm glad it's finally happening. The electric assist will be helpful on those hills. But I also would like to second statements made by certain councilors about the need to expand to other neighborhoods outside the downtown as soon as possible. The downtown is pretty compact, and I think is at a scale where walking is still fulfills most people's needs, certainly. I guess I'm thinking of the theory where people are generally inclined to commute about 30 minutes each way from their home. So expanding to those neighborhoods that are about a 30 minutes walk away from the downtown area as quickly as possible. So I think about the far north side around the Bowery area, students who live on the west side, especially medical student or grad students, expanding bike share to those areas as soon as possible would be really helpful for those students who, for them, a bicycle would make a substantial difference in the time they need to commute. All right, that's all. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Austin. Item 15, City Council information. Why don't we start with, let's see, Mazahir, and move to the right.
Nothing really to put out on. The only thing is, we went to the Labor Day yesterday. It was very nice. A lot of people came, and it was a very successful day. That's it.
Okay. John?
One item. I attended the ice cream social grand opening, I guess you might say, for Lincoln Elementary the day after our last meeting. And it sure is nice to see these elementary schools seeing the additions after years and years of not having them. So it was a great event. Lots of fun at the event itself.
Yeah, those are a long time in my past doing those with the kids. But yeah, it is. It's great to see those. I drive down Dodge Street and see Horace Mann, and it just looks wonderful and serving our students so much better. I think that bond referendum is one of the best things this overall community has done in a long time, and that's not just Iowa City. Since our last meeting, I helped with a strategic planning meeting for the Johnson Clean Energy District. It's a group of individuals starting a nonprofit to really, I think, help us and help the community in terms of ways and strategies of dealing with our emissions. And I think a lot of it focused on housing, but they're getting their feet under them and trying to figure out, how to do it and how to launch. And so I think it'll be a few months before we see a whole lot because they want to do it right. But good group of people and had a lot of fun.
Great. Boeing.
On August 27th, we met with the Mobile Home Task Force again. We'll be meeting every month, so we'll be meeting again on the 24th of September. At that last meeting, we talked about the possibilities on the city level that we can do to discourage these out-of-state companies that buy up these mobile home communities. But we also realize that there are important things that need to be done on the state level to protect these very vulnerable people, because it's happening all over our state currently. Of course, that last Saturday, I didn't go. Many folks went to the Hawkeye football game, as was mentioned. It was a night game, which was nice, and weather was good, a little sprinkly. As far as I know, it went well. Didn't hear about any problems, so go Hawks. And as Mazahir mentioned, the Labor Day picnic, which was held at City Park. The crowd included people from all over, including some presidential candidates. So what I was happy with was I was very proud of our gateway entrance to the area, because all these folks would have had to come in that way into town, and I think it just left a nice impression on them, on what our community looks like and feels. Coming up Thursday, talking about the schools, Thursday the 12th at 5 o'clock is the man ribbon cutting, so that will be exciting to see that. And that evening, there's a child care symposium, and there's been a lot of talk about that being one of the largest impediment for workers, that they're not only the cost of it, but just the availability of it. So I'll be looking forward to hear what they have to discuss about that. That's all.
Bruce, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, so I'll leave the Iowa Public Radio report to the mayor, who we attended together. On the 22nd of August, I was able to go to Kirk Ferentz Children's Hospital Luncheon, and that was a spectacular event. That is, I think they were in their 20th year or something like that of holding that event. And it was at the Corville Marriott, and that was awesome to be a part of. And then on that Friday at 8 a.m., August 23rd, the Housing Trust Fund of Johnson County celebrated their 15th year. And there were some exciting things coming from that report, and there are some things that the city should be very proud of because we got a rousing ovation for our involvement with the Housing Trust Fund. And those funds are critical in really keeping the housing stock available and affordable within Iowa City. So kudos to all of the counselors as well as to the staff for their involvement there. That's all I wanted to report on today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bruce. So as Bruce indicated, he and I were interviewed about our climate crisis resolution for the August 22nd version of Ben Kiefer's River to River show. And Ben asked some really stimulating questions. I hope Bruce and I responded well. I hope it was a fruitful thing from the listener's point of view. It was fun to do, I know that. Lots of other things. I attended the League of Women Voters reception and membership drive a week and a half ago. Went to Alexander Elementary's Welcome Back Students event on the 23rd. Greatly enjoyed the Latino Festival. It was so much fun. It was better than last year, and a lot of happy people out there. It was really great. I attended a Women Build fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity. That was very good to do. Had an opportunity to meet the director of the National Aeronautic and Space Administration and a couple high-level officials that work in NASA, and heard them praise U of I researchers in the physics and astronomy department. It was really fun to do. I learned a lot. You want me to talk about the moon and Mars? I'll start. Yeah, okay. I can take a hint. Tomorrow, Jeff, Simon, I think Tracy, and I are going to the Housing Iowa Conference in Cedar Rapids, where Shelter House is going to get an award for Cross Park Place. Is that correct? I hope I said that right.
Yes.
Yeah, but I got to be here 6:45 to catch a ride with Jeff. Oh, no. Oh, well.
Because you cannot bike, Jim.
No, that's a long bike ride.
Love to, but again. So everybody needs to know that C-SPAN and its bus are going to be at the Farmers Market tomorrow afternoon from 5 to 7.
Wow.
So one can just drop by, and next thing you know, you're going to be on national television on C-SPAN. And I don't know what they do except interview people and say, hey, how you doing? And everybody starts talking and having a good time. Also, I'm going to be sharing dinner with Josh Schamberger of our Convention and Visitors Bureau and other directors of CVBs in a couple or 3 days. Apparently, those directors are coming together, and Josh is feeling very good about the fact that they're meeting here this year. Last, I should mention cyclocross and the UCI World Cup. They're going to be taking place on the 13th through the 15th, and if I remember rightly, on the 14th is when the World Cup event is going to take place. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's plenty. Enough for me. Jeff?
Nothing for me.
Ashley, Eleanor, Kelly. Oh, well, there you go.
Let me ask you, for the, you mentioned about the mobile home committee. I think I'm in that committee.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, but I don't receive any email about meetings.
because when you were gone, Rockne filled in for you, so he continued to go, although he wasn't at the last meeting, but you should be coming again. So Sarah should know that you're back and that
Yes,
you want
because I
to come.
haven't received any
yeah,
emails. Yeah,
right.
please do that. Thank you.
I'll tell Sarah.
Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move.
Second.
Moved by Slade, seconded by Thomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thanks.